I just want to test my audio. Can somebody just talk and make sure it's...
Hi.
Would all the judges be able to put emails in the chat to like make it a bit quicker? My computer's slow and stuff. And opening web pages is difficult right now.
And did you see my chat about adding MBA debate?
Oh, I can do that. Christina, do you want to be on the email chain? I don't believe I have.
Sorry, I put it in there earlier. I'll put it in there again.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Awesome, thank you. Okay, is everybody good for me to send out the 1AC? Okay, should be sent. Let me know when everyone has it and I will get started. The plan is like in there. We're not cowards. We're not going to send out the plan later. Okay. Is everybody good to go? Okay. Oh, wait, Chandon, just let me know when you're good. Okay, cool. In 1977, the Clean Water Act has limited water pollution through a requirement that companies adopt best available technology, economically available BAT to limit discharges for 2015. The CPB requires EPA statistics that can be considered 1977. The benefits for available technology to economically BAT discharge with district facilities. BAT become a principal national reason of controlling pollution, but that requirement is currently circumscribed for patent protections of companies. Patent will be those be best pollution control technology, and they do not use it themselves nor allow anyone else to use it. This seems to be not available for the purposes of BAT. This frown. In 18, the government handled further respectful for useful to use can pass technology. If superior offers use based options for particular purposes of BAT was that interest if they require use of efficient use of beneficial to BAT options because of the to comply with the issues not suitable will violate enforced consequences of the BAT decided to shape Congress the goal of discharge waters the if the limits on entities by the optimal consideration that the industry will use determine whether changes require the sustainable avoid the concept of updated otherwise it determine optimal technology standards progress with the developer which benefits otherwise lost or delayed delay the BAT however the public protection hold with their legal obligations to use licensed device they harm this sort of way protected by patent law. The available should be recurring. The best of the technology hopefully should require some of the benefit was something been realized for 20 years. The force patent students use BT efficient waters every commercial operation before patent protection to hold it is unlikely to violation because the law would not force empirically CB effectiveness hinges on how stringent text standards and whether it could be circumvented. This appear in 1960 the effects of pollution depends on how the law's behavior it was considered actually changed which is because these evolve on the basis of evolving innovation complies with ability to sources to circumvent these laws existing regions to indicate regulatory changes rise from variety of sources to sources estimates how much change be attributed to verified CB pollution theory years valid NTPs different regulation of 14 years events of the planet to decrease efficiency of each time the act incorporates standard changes to decline systems to comply. That's key. First, U.S. water pollution is all the charge. Recent studies prove that it's essential that the near term is not due to avoid catastrophe. McRae and Raymond in 20. Over half your testified violations of scientifically established requirements necessary to keep the healthy for use 20% violations of the standards state water quality standards the indicated water pollution is immediate existential threat and preserving small scale hydrocycle for pollution is key. Invisible tipping points be because cascading cliffs all cause direct extinction societal pollution to occur and all 20 soil course water solution next important present history the preservation has created tissue humidity undermined system functionality integration linked to econ clubs and social body ecosystems within living systems as well as the face for food chains. Babylon clubs to soil erosion adjustable drinking examples that here clubs to soil erosion driven by mismanagement the relationship of the regimes of changes with the rapid fake small changes in the adjustments of the irreversible clubs interaction with water huge flexibility and spread the rescue humidity from clubs under deadly weighting as a current trajectory making CBB effective would be sufficient to solve ambiguity to extremely quickly empirics proof Simons 11 rivers were lived the burning water trajectory to reach levels of water change fraction of conquest the press CBA result from the history of humankind second best new studies prove chemical pollution starting to cause extinction, but still reversible for now. This all methodology when you see safe under exodus and annual releasing the increasing phase of capacity cell scale, impact the integrity of the entire ecosystem, be revealed sense of the quantum battery, chemical pollution, potential loss of the almost life defense, ecosystem persistence, mobility with large distribution of condition for energy, chemicals may be cascade, this is affecting ambient returns to safe phase. Safe is basically being achieved through capping rated capacity and endocrine disruptors chemicals are propagating the water cycle causes extinction Lopez and 10. The latest chemical knowledge indicates precipitation waters having effects on regulatory mechanisms. However, the holds ETs enter the promising development frameworks and the limit expression ETCs are on track to cause extinction, but we can solve now if fast macrola 17 research shows to be firmly it's declining again. Efficiency ETCs are visibly moving recent published analysis accounts decline by 40% to the most of another human practice very possibility to be trying to continue the plant spills over places near limit on tech capture across a wide range of areas for known in 18 PTA before use of alpha patent law of course patent knowledge utilizing technology these serious examples of the protections of rivers of environmentally optimal strategy. These kind of system patent is the patent is located. Thus, the plain federal government should establish the best available technology for protection of water resources in the United States includes a fair use exemptions for patent infringement. Finish use patent decisions spill over the plan, but use the cost of court to embrace a fair patent use across all areas. A law that leads 16. Supreme Court embraces all extensions of rules court establishing a flexible approach towards preferences to the states generalists. The court extends our policy oriented standards which concepts from court of data. Almost equal language to refer to holdings for the government objections to interpretive function consistency between competition of patent specific rules acknowledging that the position of regulation regulatory seems Supreme Court is I heard universally manifest American number of areas of Oregon common knowledge infringement court negative of borrowing and answers to questions if your patent use is limited to cases where markets are unsure patent holders are becoming anti-competitive infringers makes some improvement or licensing is possible that there is no doctrine that optimizes for innovation. Chamber 11 years or copies of the exemption desirable the first licensing failure the second large previous with patent incentives that the listing markets arise because usually able to pay restrictions value pharmaceuticals developing countries to share companies manufacture these markets without competition for the tickets keep using the role of licensing operators socially desirable activities beyond patent these markets exemptions anti-competition for licensing are complicated in Asia as a for license anti-competition and PS manufacturers simply holding unable to negotiate license objection for blocking each doctrine legislation for investor causes for investor as no reason to come to use desirable innovation patent use market depends on the extent to which these use disclosure facilitation for independent investors services search costs which infrastructure enable first infringing patent exclusivity collapses innovation specifically computing settlement routine patent system innovation no paper I know do with the talk over to front user also innovation never see the benefits discourage investment in future shopping use of incentive improve product culture monopoly than the issue mentioned for improvement occurred. The patent expired, patent card like was clarified. Several patent use holders want to get longer. Looks still occurs if a license is an obstacle. Particularly technical activities arguments to assume limited factor. Lack of ideas activity however limiting is worth combining ideas. Everyone have ideas. Exclusive innovation is dead. Try it for alternative paradigms. Stramberg, laboratory exemption, visual exemption level for price and use intervention. Each episode exception of the patent regime change cost of innovation depends on assumptions for industrial seller innovation through source game shooter through use collaborative innovation or other inducing ag user tech innovation share innovation for collaborative innovation for the product assumptions for end user under content investment disseminate tech acceptable change use increasing social externalities authors use losing the innovation or race causes extinction chain in 20 3D printing engineering IoT is 5G cyber problems benefits security downside rate risk communication 3D printing computer vision vaccines is bringing our resources for live kinetic engineering provide class of people check energy universal possibility authorized by the race hackers AI have missiles other corporate democracy for leadership upsetting strategy ability and real space systems the US and Asian galaxies to harness tech with maximum subsidies mitigating downsizing including various patent all solid disease response to back in 21 vaccinations and for effective health vaccinations if able humanity countless disease pharma going to 7 billion encouraging drug manufacturing with this product to prevent some sense of the far life saving innovation to ensure health crisis versus ability to model have a cooperative continuous action about application of social ability help operate solution to varying and harmful practices disease existential rank 21 senses for beginning studies in nuclear potential could be used nuclear military intervention human species management system crisis vulnerability increasing nuclear use by increasing supply shortly pandemic and nuclear from conflict pandemic losing nuclear armament staging in action as nuclear demonstration for the forcing first viral of conflict risk effects on nuclear war patent stifle free speech young and 19 patents for free speech valid for some patents for UN patents efficacy network accessing databases collecting user and sending advocacy messages to maybe share with clipping convince me for evil sir core political speech not for intervention of political events and life measures for participation to politics about laws operate and gigantic first amendment duty free zone mark the credit duty free zone fair use solve Xiang 19 patent laws document adequate fair use document no fantasy can monopolize the tech fair use academic research copyright free speech for victims free IP owners can suppress the information is key to democracy IOC 16 everyone should have free speech by celebrity everyone seeking the restriction of the method can for the parent interest free speech and dedicated other free speech and exchange ideas in social health democracy UN research indicates social for social development democracy caps all existential risk eaten in 20 ended with the human life and lock seconds midnight the shift of reluctantly threatening nuclear war the Bible cash generation democracy help with the excellence of crisis with the station democracy instigation from citizens to crisis kills the crisis Trump is new figurehead of new reactionary international. That card is marked at reactionary international.
Okay, reactionary international. Perfect.
Yeah, and there's one other card I marked. The first Xiang card at First Amendment duty-free zone.
Okay, that's fine. You get for cross?
Yep.
Is the F a court decision or does it have the EPA set a new standard for bats?
The F would involve the court.
Okay, what does it mean to involve the court?
Would have the courts make a decision regarding what the standards are for patent infringement. So like they would borrow from current precedent in like copyright arenas and apply that sort of thing with regards to best.
That makes sense. The EDC scenario, what kind of pollutants are causing EDC dispersion?
I mean, there's a bunch of them and I was never very good at chemistry, but they are endocrine disruptors. They all have very, very long names. I don't like if you
like what sort of products are they present in? Like how do they get around the environment?
Our argument is that they primarily are transmitted via waterways.
Sure. Stallman evidence, it's about computing innovation. What technology is innovated? What technology is innovated as per the Stallman evidence?
Let me look at the card. Jane evidence says things like AI, 3D printing, new forms of energy generation. Well, actually, that doesn't really say energy generation, more like energy efficiency. Like IoT technologies, cyber stuff, 5G.
How does the app solve those?
Yeah, our argument is that the plan's precedent would be applied to patent law more broadly, and that certain exceptions to patent law are good for promoting innovation. I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, explain that.
Yeah, so our argument is that the way the patent system is run now is anti-competitive. There is an incentive to patent something, not license it, and then sit on the technology without doing anything for it. The app would create a set of exceptions called fair use. I can explain those exceptions if you want, but our argument is
that's fine. The democracy impact, where do you have evidence that says democracy is low now? What evidence indicates that democracy is low now?
IOC evidence says that like free speech is declining globally. We can like read another card if you want.
But like what's the alternative to democracy? Like you don't have any evidence that says China and Russia will win, right? You don't have any
This isn't like a US hedge competing with China and Russia. Our argument is that backsliding in like other countries is a bad thing.
Okay, what would that result in the replacement with? Like, what's the alternative to democracy? Like China, Russia, authoritarianism, or what?
Like countries becoming autocratic.
Okay, sure, makes sense. We'll take 30 for prep.
Cool.
Uh, 10 starting now.
A10.
Sending. File. Sent. 9 off, advantage 1, advantage 2. Y'all have the doc. See, Ben has wait. Just give me a thumbs up when you got it, Ben. Sweet.
First off, season station protection requires season use mission I6 of all protection, constitution, considering self protection. Command station use vote neck for limits or unfair ways to affect water pollution. Next up is the equities count by the United States Supreme Court should narrowly enjoying the best available technology standards includes a fair use exception for a patent first round the ground set. Equities cannot be broader than necessary to count about solves without issuing universal justice Westman and 18 grading against whoever benefits in a non-party does not make an injunction universal. Others may benefit, but the decision remains the plaintiff's non-party use first for presidential value. The Supreme Court never ruled on universal injunctions. Circuits have embraced them bigly. In 18, the courts have assumed the power to enter international injunctions. Court has not ruled on these injunctions. The court shall curtail the practice. Universal injunctions kill effective government spill, especially over water Begley. And 20 plaintiffs have a boundless opportunity to shop for reforms nationwide. Every injunction has been issued by a judge appointed by a different party. Breach some about the law injunctions out there. The government to terminal risking health and safety, harming the environment, interfere with this operation. Government programs and policy is met with the parliamentary lawsuits considered the readings to CWA. This week's expensive issues ruled the section 18 states that challenge for the sixth circuit state the rule nationwide extinction color 21. We live in a vulnerable world disease, so we go financial actions tax on systems of climate vulnerability, systems life depends on single mutation away from causing a deadly pandemic. Administrative devices mitigate probability later. Strategy of preparedness, disasters, blackouts, terror attacks, joint experts coordination planning across agencies, systems that remains the same life from a nuclear attack. Administrative readiness, vast range of function, welfare, economy, industry, parsa as admin states. Next off is extinction. K reject the one sees extinction first ideology because green light genocide towards in twin priority should resection versus appalling trivialize trust like World War II to the Holocaust moral excuse dismiss trust to the future dangerous ideology among the West because they are ethically don't worry about it. You are a better ideology second to degree is for genocidal cash up the obsession harm the policy of leaders take seriously the claim of saving people say it's not good for who knows what trustees might excuse next office advantage capital the United States for government should ban usage of biological benefits of the biochlorophylls center chain pesticides and biofethanol increased regulation of EDCs increased research development of artificial intelligence 3D printing IoT technologies 5G increased antitrust enforcement of pharmaceutical sector increased research and development of vaccine tech and abolish protection water resource lax enforcement hinders regulation of synthetic biology the EP will weaponize water protection as smart as the industry NASA enough in 15 regular microorganisms the agency would have to harm the environment the TSSCA do not require that info be reported in conduct to states the EPS jurisdiction of algae gets into the waterways under the CWA people bring a toward against party to obtain the cleanup abolishing water protection fosters an innovative environment that outpaces China solving myriad of existential risks they've read that impact in the 1AC it averts biotechnical war, which outweighs nuclear worst mallet, FT biotech alters equation of military and expressing interest in genomics, of course, Army too. Be aware of the biological tools the vectors that could be deadly targeted populations that are same proteins that open up their new frontiers. So where biotech attacks target human bioregulators to be EW said to cause destruction more powerful than in your weapons army. C6 biotech holds the potential for power protection of beyond. Adversary sectors exploding biotech nobly. China, India next, obviously unilateral declaration confident in the United States. Federal government should declare that foreign states and members of the private sector may rely on intention the United States to establish the best available technology for water includes various exemption for patent infringement. The United States government should enforce this declaration as a binding through public and private rights of action and narrow its water protection jurisdiction to exclude establishing the best available technology for protection of water resources in the United States includes a fair use exception for patent infringement. It solves the case of Ormond and 15 the court has employed the law of the treaties in a judicial reasoning. A state may take a unilateral binding commitment governing an law does not make the municipal law of the states not like a typical treaty unilaterally by declaration express the consent to the bound through unilateral statements. It breathes license to the law of unilateral commitments assertion and 18 competence quagmire only contained by collective action and would cut the agreements about revealing it can do nothing about political mix do not contempt of the governance of law would become irrelevant. This dismiss and DC so force the laws of the treaties of unilateral declarations with others recent on commitments of where there's surveillance obligations regarding unilateral action that can lead to new rules specifically environmental and nuclear risk extinction and 21 unilateral declaration assurance indicates the intent to be bound to the effects of climate change impact nuclear restricted plans of emergency human rights about due to territorial integrity are threatening to avoid breakdown. Cut the card at breakdown. Next off is the politics that binds PC passes Chinese. Skip that. Next off, the states capital in the 50 states and relative territory should establish the best available technology for protection of water resources in the United States includes various exemption for patent infringements. It solves cases of Shapiro card says it could happen through Massachusetts. Next up is the court called decide new water protection sites full allegation calling the court Stinson and one environmental laws are big. This is only compromise CWA to coincide with upsurge of protection conservation seats explosion litigation law. Upstream early often nationalizing backlogs cause judges to banish data protection case handling and 20 same rule that reduces bill workloads of judiciaries that data protection cases prompts long and involved. There are cost actions complex of work that judges eager to get case orthodox data consistent with the appellate courts the solicitors and data protection cases causes weaponized AI extinction Mailson and 19 private sector is responsible for data. The Chinese hackers use data to train AI in the cyberworks and make up the gaps in Chinese data sets of training AI for military use. Beijing seeks to lead the world this way 30 years. Some of the data competition US should prepare for authoritarian cyber attacks on companies. Cut the card at companies. The advantage one. Hydrocycle is not existential. House said 19 which you continue current extinction for 2 years attorney use university while there will be a hospital if it wasn't for speech news who less numbers and who's less capable rational response committee will make adjustments. Pollution is an existential creeper. 18 chemical pollution is Hollywood itself. We will post ourselves to extinction dashes and nations clean up to reduce pollution and comments become circular pollutants are recognized before. Cash Ravi Harvard says endocrine disruption is bunk hardy and 20 extinction deploying a storm has been exaggerated harder. Bird found experts believe our research has been based on carbonic assumption count. Various wide range has been influenced by genetic code. High sperm is not high gas sperm count is not indicator of health. The probability of conception idea the count is linked to fertility is unsupported by any of the lower counts caused by disrupting chemicals advantage to America's should I read that card? The tech dominance card. pandemics don't cause extinction of fodder, and 20 highest fatalities of below is unclear whether fatality would be sustained outside of Africa. Unlikely the death of 90% would lead to extinction war. Seems unlikely to consider pathogen in person wars of pathogens that would have to have a long incubation time to persons affected survive in wide temperatures are dangerous for a range of ages, genetic and genes of the pathogens which cause 99% of fatality. Easier to quarantine. Democratic peace theories cherry picked dorsally, not typical relies on hundreds of studies to support pieces weak to correlation of diadical level of evidence at the mnemonic levels and includes 8,000 articles to distinguish conflict severity determinants of different no evidence that democracies are more peaceful and general when factors included democracies spur use of dems of peace exist when others have the high development support. Democracies are more likely to fight each other. The wars are best explained by continuity lines and economy just democracy. No studies. The app does not have an internal link to tech leadership. The patents are not key. The app increases American leadership, which causes the decline of prestige of rising powers con. In 19, the rising power will demand an alteration of the hierarchy of prestige. Refers to perception of states, state capabilities, ability, and willingness to exercise power to states that counter prestige obtain preferred outcomes. So when the existing cash one declines, the rising power is close in the established power is unable to impose its will onto others. Rising power wants a higher rung. Establishing power will resist. So allies are more likely to resist. The rising power will want to settle the prestige issue through facts on the ground. Rising states won't aggressively challenge international or now because it suits their interests, but that invests the overall order with resilience. Muki and 19 China, India, Brazil are not not challenging the order despite dissatisfaction. They have adopted free running only generally contributed to explained by prestige in favor of the U.S. So the question is whether it gets to club of great powers. Rising powers unwilling to pay unless they are their full members. Use unwilling to submit to rising powers. So Trump unwilling to challenge democracy, multilateral open up space for government architectures. Rising powers that become guardians of the status quo. The leadership of Costa is only worthwhile if by use of credibility translated into status of benefits of deeper challenges. The U.S. worldview outcomes will hinge on the ability of rising powers to take leadership scenarios, may reinvest the order of the resilience, aligning capabilities of prestige will take a great diplomatic energy to overcome reflexive free riding relative Chinese aggressions to turn by its perception of status. The plan enables effective use pushback, which causes Chinese escalation brand 18 Chinese leaders remain of the main status satisfied to advance aims through small steps rather than aggressive lunches. Beijing may find itself dealing with a greater pushback. Chinese leaders have to face a future not so bright. Beijing has become more aggressive as she has been promising of national rejuvenation on the assumption that aggressive growth of the power will back up its demand if it does not hold. The Chinese leaders may be take more dramatic steps that take Taiwan by force to teach Japan a lesson to break resistance to the SCST, the SCSR, rupture Americans' alliance system, and secure China could shift to impulsive behavior.
No time.
So it's 5 seconds.
Okay, you good? Yep. Okay. Do you skip anything besides like politics and con?
No.
Okay, cool. Unilateral declaration counterplan. I guess how is this like? How is this enforced?
Sure.
So the CAR talks about how the unilateral declaration would be similar to how treaties are enforced. You would have the US sign on under international law, not under a domestic law. It would essentially have other states bind the US to whatever intention it has signed under the counterplan.
Which states?
Other states signed under ILA. It would be a form of like CIO,
Yeah.
like enforcing
Russia,
binding law.
If Russia is like, screw you, we don't want your patents to work, could they do that?
Okay, the US isn't enforcing ILA on other states. I'm confused with the question here.
Well, you just, no, I meant like, you said that the solvency mechanism is other countries have like private right of action or whatever and can bind the US.
Well, no, the US would voluntarily bind itself, but it would just do so under international law.
Wait, so, okay, if like this is just US binds itself under international law and does the plan, why is it competitive?
Because it doesn't happen under domestic law. It's not a specific legal I mean, you'll see the permanent counterpart law.
Okay, whatever. Equities counterplan, I guess similar question. Why is this different in the plan?
Again,
Why is
you'll see the block, but main thing is it's not a universal injunction.
Okay, what, like, explain the difference.
We'll make arguments that the AF has to be a universal injunction, the counterplan is not.
What is the difference between a universal injunction and whatever it is you do?
It would only be the plaintiffs that are directly affected.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Sure. If there's no precedential effect, how does this solve the second advantage?
There would be precedential
Yeah.
effect. The first part of the block says that
Okay.
even limited injunctions would allow future plaintiffs.
Wait, okay,
to
if there's
sue on
precedential
precedent of the
effects,
first.
then that doesn't make any sense, whatever.
It does make
It's
sense.
a spillover
Who are
argument.
the plaintiffs in this case, I guess?
The people that are directly affected. So like you've made arguments about how
people are not complying with best available technology, that's how, and it's polluting rivers and stuff, the people that are harmed from that pollution would be plaintiffs. It would
Like
bring us-
obviously the plan would have to have a test case that uses
Yeah.
reports.
Oh, wait, okay, people harmed by rivers or pollution?
Obviously, the app would have to have a test case if it's court
Okay.
ruling. The
Actually,
counterclaim would only apply to the plaintiffs in those test
Okay.
case, and then other plaintiffs in the future would be able to sue
Okay.
under the precedent created by the first.
It's fine. If everything is condo,
Yes, as is always a logical policy option.
can you kick planks on the advantage counterplan
Yeah,
slash
yes.
abolish water
Yeah.
counterplan?
Yes, it's a new app.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just take the remaining 4 seconds. It's whatever. Okay. 10. 5:15.
Can you mute yourself?
Yes.
All right, I'm setting it up. Okay, it's done. Can I get this? Thanks. Okay, anyone not good for an order? Cool. It'll be advantage 1, advantage 2, T cessation, the extinction K, the advantage counter plan, the unilat counter plan, the equities counter plan, the states counter plan, the court clock decide. Yeah, I can give that again. So advantage 1, advantage 2, T cessation, the extinction K, the advantage counter plan, the unilat counter plan, the equities counter plan, and then the states counter plan, the court clock decide. For sure. Yeah, just waiting on Ben.
Okay, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Anyone not good at this point, or else I will get started. Cool. Establishing a fair use exemption is key to revival of the BAT standard in CWA, otherwise inevitable extinction for collapse of the hydrocycle and chemicals. Yes, hydrocycle impact does assume water and soil access. This is just about generic biodiversity. Yes, endocrine extinction best in US 2022. Studies prove that it trigger extinction through cascading systemic effects, but that is still reversible through regulations. Advantage 2. Fair use exemption, the CWA spill up broadly create exemptions from linears as industries key to winning tech races, use response, and democracy. The tech dominance doomed argument is wrong because this is just a status quo descriptive. The plan would fix that. Emerging tech is yes, emerging tech impact doesn't assume authoritarian uses that ignore status quo rule-based systems. The disease impact, yes, disease, they answered the wrong impact. It's not the disease literally kills everyone that breeds conflict through isolationism, sanctions, and that's RECNA. The democracy turn is wrong. First is that there's no risk of a link, not that pushing authoritarian, it's not that pushing. It's not about pushing authoritarians back, but rather that backsliding itself leads to populist leaders that are trigger happy and trigger nuclear war. But the turn doesn't assume what you see internally. First, that China winning the innovation arms race, basically Christian miscalculation, inevitable deaths, advanced military AI, 5G, and IoT, which ensures proliferation arms race that go nuclear. That's change. Second, that turns the world into a repressive dictatorship, crisis and ceding free speech internally, which makes it even Hong Kong and Taiwan crises inevitable. That's Xiang. Third is the democratic peace theory is empirically proven by the Ukraine crisis, not dyadic. Right during 731, autocrats stories who were democratic dictators more likely willing to initiate hybrid wars because they know they can crack down on political opposition, democratic leaders, which towards a few casualties in armies, demonstrate calcification, rigidity, dictatorship. Leadership often sound themselves yes men and political cronies. Democratic leadership more likely have robust debate, actual combat, and unpolyneutral scenario. The China scenario is wrong. First, that there's no internal link or uniqueness. The evidence is from 2019 does assume Biden just as India, Brazil, and China won't challenge the ally. None of it ties democracy to emboldening China's great power challenges. Second, that hardline U.S. status denial is inevitable. Davis 20. NSC gives your wish list away. So after China proposals a little action, no longer the U.S. dispatch air carriers, SCS below. China tech companies increasing arms to attack. China action increased official and current competition. Unlikely to de-escalate no matter who wins the presidential election. No matter whether it's Biden, share Trump analysis.
of China. Third is that unipolarity is unsustainable and sustainable and prevents great power war, transfer, risk extinction. Beckley 18. The global power of the U.S. is in a league of its own. 25% will 35% innovation. Fourth, the global spending in the only country that can fight wars beyond its home and strike targets anywhere within our bases. And maybe or for stronger than the extent. Combined, nothing has ever existed like the spirit of the U.S. will remain the world superpower. Decades we're not living in transnational areas. Said the unipolarity. People think that China is overtaking shortcomings, sort of perception. They literature mismeasures power. This is on the side of GDP and exaggerate poor populous countries like China. Massive welfare burden, security burdens during the resources and measure power. In that terms, it becomes clear that America's lead is much larger projection of power based on flawed notions about why power is felt. Cessation. First is we plan is used by firms that don't restrict their best available text standards. Second is protection means permanent. College 20 under clean water act protection does not mean prevention means permanent because landowners planning for must get approval. Landowners must reduce impacts for wetland loss. So eliminating all these auto-list depicts and repurpose use counter plans also makes states unbeatable and divorce states from literature controversy. For the precision, their interpretation all about environmental protection. Our sites of the UWA, so it's most likely to align with the rest that determines free on pre-tournament prep and incentivize going for T over suspect 5 functional limits. States EPA trade-off process counter plans near insurmountable hurdles. 6 reasonability competing in terms of race to the margin that turns clash. Extinction, the extinction K. Framework way the plan versus competitive opportunity class plan focus debate guarantees Afghan shifting the question of the debate rigs the game for the negative and kill questions. They moot the entirety of when I see perm do both and perm do the alternative. The cases that if sad are internal links are real and floating peaks are bad, just flying peeking out of one rep and winning, which makes being F impossible. Gateway issues double speak for this, but no alt means condo can't justify its voter to AC and Jack Smart across apps. They're evident in graphic description, not the averages effect.
This was just like the util is bad.
Yeah. Util's good. We'll defend this. Like obviously you're not going to go for this with one card. We'll answer this becomes a real argument. Yeah.
They like epistemic.
Epistemic fiat is bad. Makes it impossible to be AF because they could just fiat away all the problems and like still picks the bad stuff above. The advantage counter plan. First is perm do both. Second is perm do every plank but ban the plan. Third is do the perm do the counter plan, and it links the benefit massive environmental regs would trigger the same internal link and doesn't solve the water advantage. Only innovation produced by fair use can facilitate rapid pollution control and waste water management that prevents water shortages and doesn't solve the patent's advantage. Fair use is key to strike a balance between profit incentive and anti-competitive claims. The middle ground for innovation across sectors. The ban ED chemicals doesn't matter because you can't just ban them. It's more about removing them and actively filtering them out of the water. Increased regulations fails. It's ineffective. Absent better tech, increasing research doesn't matter. Throwing money R&D does not guarantee innovation. Solvent 17 U.S. came fourth place. GDP and R&D. Why you shouldn't be alarmed? I know there's Apple's investment R&D as well as indicator innovative in 2016. Apple revenue decline is price decline faster. At the same time R&D investment actually increased. Apple R&D increased while revenue decline. Investment R&D is not the same as innovation. The revenue of a company country investment R&D is not a clear indication how innovative a country is. Also patents are a prereq. Otherwise innovation is impossible. Antitrust enforcement stuff doesn't matter. It fails absent exemptions because the companies are in the correct right now, but R&D fails. That was above. The ban the plan plank is not external because we have read the same impact about competing with China and biotech. That was the Jane piece of evidence, which means that at best this is an advantage. Trying to find another plank to solve our advantage.
Perm plan and the counter plan except you ban everything except
Perm plan and the counter plan except for like ban all water protection except for the plan. And it's non-feasible for 20. Biotech underestimates challenges in developing lethality and natural agents. Biological systems exist in trade-off between competing effects, changing transmission effects, lethality, incubation period, and immune system are several outside of patching require for our greater understanding that currently possess condos, voters, use to AC charges, shock on one and sees undermines research advocacy, inconsistent, unique worlds, just how these different insurance intensive of solid states can counter plan with the AFREEDS. Project 3, the unilat counter plan. Ben's gonna send this out in a second. First is perm do both. Second is perm do the counter plan. Private right of action is the way the AF plan standard could be enforced because it relies on lawsuits. And perm do the plan and the counter plan's process over water resources. And perm do the plan and not the last plank. The counter plans must be functionally and technically competitive. Key to force that benefits to be germane to the plan and avoid penniless certainty is key. The threat of patent infringement suits is enough shutdown charges and discourage innovation. Patent use that's one. Prospect of litigation chills patent use. 15 challenging patent defining a challenge patent listing has consequences of competition by leading the question of generic entry comes later. Prospect and litigation have chilling effect on entry altogether delayed can result in billions of dollars of loss. Logically incoherent. You can't threaten court action. It bolsters theory and either prove they cancel the F4 with collapse judicial impediment by creating precedent. Of course, accuracy to external actors. U.S. courts like up 14 restriction on as parte communication concerning on proceeding and judge may consult with one or judge or other court personnel. Counterplay causes delay immediacy. Counterplay causes the and say. And Trump thumbs the internal net benefit. Trump thumbs the internal net benefit should arrest one thing. Plus, they haven't won that it spills over, or that the AF is uniquely key. They can't get and doesn't get Russia and China on board if they're revisionists. They never agreed to work. Yeah.
So that's also a sovereignty deficit because like Russia and China would sabotage.
Also a sovereignty deficit because they just sabotage any like U.S. leadership or like yeah. The equities counter plan. First is perm do both. Second is perm do the counter plan. Third is perm do the plan and counter plans process over water resources. Plaintiff only model incentivizes over deterrence. That's bad. It can unilaterally make decisions about the scope of patent law and doesn't solve spillover. It only affects the plaintiff and is narrow that it doesn't access other areas. The counter plan is incoherent. Plan doesn't overturn any decision, imports existing fair use doctrine into copyright into patents, which was a judicial invention. King 20 fair use forgives patents. The federal court has intervened on its own fair use patent laws or change judicial period before Congress codified it. Federal courts are ruling patent case that favor use. by second, commerce is by eBay and pace. That means they use a weird process, cross-apply the certainty stuff from above the net benefit. Unilateral injunctions are the status quo. What proves this is a very non-unique dissent, and one unilateral injunction doesn't spill over. There's no reason why this is key. The internal net benefit is backwards. Courts are ineffective at resolving existential risks. Yeah, analytic. The state's counterplan. First is do both, alleviates federal enforcement burdens, looks like follow on, which removes political controversy. Second is do the counterplan and federalize the state's. Third, it links to the net benefit. Why does this avoid court clog? Fourth is uniformity as a voter, distorts the literature and makes generating deficit impossible, then it gets non-uniform state action. And the counterplan is preemptive state fair use doctrine would directly cut against federal patents that grants exclusive use of patent holder. That's hurdy, and uniformity is key. Patchwork of state laws, decks, innovation possible. No, it's correct. The court clogged this set. COVID thumbs proves resiliency. Clog is overwhelming now. Collide. Landon Broadstead 21. A backlog of criminal civil cases piled up, exacerbating already crowded docket civil calendars just sitting there because judges are spending all the time with criminal caseloads. Mark the card of criminal caseloads, and the floodgates are fake. Render 20. Floodgates is overwhelming, lacking empirical source, more evidence than obstacle courts have frequently predicted to lose sharper evidence of hostile is to emerge because they yet to pass rules or procedures that make kind of weed out cases, doctrine, digital resources such as plain preclusion, issue preclusion, abstention, joiner, case consolidation, prevent lawsuits simultaneously in multiple courts, and work gets delegated. Well, V13 workload is concerned employing tools which district judges rely on, magistrate judges and appellate judges rely on, attorneys and case managers who judges have called for an expansion of B2, leave it destroyed. There's no terminal impact. It's the same as the affirmatives like tech stuff. Like
There's a bunch of other court decisions about water.
bunch of other court decisions that thump all prove that it's resilient or it doesn't matter.
Can we get those cards that Ben has? Yeah.
This isn't a very messy doc of lots of other things. I don't want to send out. This document also has like the one and seals because that was pretty juicy, but like it has every part we read. Okay, I sent out the
You got Chen. Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Theory.
Condo, I think picks bad on the extinction K. Let me check. Anything else? I think that should be it.
Okay. Certainty deficit. This card, last name starts with an N, is saying right now the status quo is uncertain. Why does this apply to the counterplan?
Which counterplan are you talking about?
You read it on Unilat.
Yeah, so we think that the process that the counterplan kind of engages in is like completely unprecedented, is definitely not like what companies would expect it to be. Even if like it like results in the plan, companies would doubt that because it like it's like
So
also,
it's unprecedented, so it's uncertain. The plan is also unprecedented.
okay. Counterplan multilateralizes everything, gives anybody on Earth functionally a private right of action to challenge patents in U.S. court. That is insane. We don't have a card about this counterplan, obviously, because it's new and this is like fake and not in the literature or whatever. But like, if we gave like Russia or China the ability to interfere in the U.S. patent system, clearly that would have destructive effects, both for the first advantage and the second advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. What is the process through which the plan expands fair use?
it would like rule on a court case that like to expand fair use by importing kind of principles from like copyright where fair use is already thing.
What case?
We don't specify one, but we think it could be like a number.
It, like, we read a card that it wouldn't overturn a past decision. This is one area that is unique where the courts can kind of just import law because it's not like based in the statute.
Wait, what evidence says they don't need a test case?
I don't remember the name of the card. It was the only card we read on the like small injunction kind of plan or whatever.
Can you explain how it works then? Like if there isn't a test case, how does the court rule?
They can just like import it. sua sponte. Like this is the one area of law where this works.
Okay, sure.
Regardless of-
Let's talk about democracy bad. The Davis card that says status denial is inevitable is about Trump giving China the middle finger. Why is that relevant?
With that obviously like bumps the like impact turn. I don't really understand the question.
Okay. Unilat thing, does the AF claim to solve unilat, or do you just think it's like a turn?
I think are you talking about the like unilat counterplan?
No, the unipolarity.
Oh, the unipolarity thing. We just think that we think it's like an even if statement. We don't think like we link to this or that like it
Okay,
matters.
is the status quo
But
unipolarity, and is the status quo unipolarity, and you think the turn changes that, or do you think the AF causes unipolarity?
we think the argument that like what's called, let me find the 1 NC card. The argument that's like, oh, decline's inevitable, like rising states want to aggressively challenge interests, et cetera, et cetera. It's an
Okay,
answer.
we have 8, 10. I still want to finish this question. Is this an add-on to the AF, or is it just a turn?
It's just a turn. It's not an add-on.
Okay.
Stop 4:15. All right. It's sent. Let me know if we're good for an order.
Okay, advantage counterplan. Then I'm gonna do the turn on advantage 2, just the democracy bad stuff. States. Then advantage 1 and advantage 2 proper, just evens.
I get that again.
Advantage counterplan. Wait, hold on. Let me expand my stand.
I don't know if you didn't hear because we are having audio issues, but you said advantage counterplan, then what?
And the democracy bad turn. Just the turn on advantage 2.
Okay.
And states. Then case. And the K.
Oh, and then wait.
K is at the bottom.
K is at the very bottom. Okay, let me find that. Okay. We are good.
The advantage counterplan solves all of case 2 frames 1 is sufficiency risk of their benefit outweighs non-quantifiable solvency deficit. Second is judge kick. We lose a perm or links to the benefits conduct question to click. The abolished planks are none of the defense matters. The 2AC to make specific links to the benefit rate. You can't draw a line between the words in the 2AC and the 1 hour. Strike new arguments on your flow. Do both links the impact on assaults. Free speech. Do the counterplan solves protection. Doesn't link to democracy bad because it doesn't incorporate patent regulations which solves free speech. Brand says you can't just regulate EDCs with no cards and no warrants. We sure as hell can just ban them. Any products that use EDCs are illegal, produce and use the argument are about R&D feelings. Literally at one corporation, Apple. Apple does not apply because it assumes big tech monopolies, not the same as startups generating new ideas because they've just been spurred. The feds, the vaccine plank was dropped into one area. Answers the counterplan solves all the disease impact. The last part doesn't apply because I'm taking abolished and all concede biotech not feasible. It means they can't access the offensive case. Baby, we get the content we read one like flex topics no longer been here controversies or to definition limit the topic, but counterplans as functional limits exacerbated by national incentive to send back the best offense for the 2AC. Their interpretation subsets the effort. It's untenable for the neg to defend the status quo. Second is reasonability. The status quo should always be a logical option. Arbitrary and unpredictable rules are worse than no rules. Punishment to fit the crime. Make the counterplans dispo. They win it. Third, it's a new app. It justifies conduct because you can't predict 2AC strategy or engage the case. Now defense. One, it's diminishing marginal utility, having more absence, peace, and value to their strategic liability. Second, it's using contradictions or a novelty does defeat highlighting from our case. Diffo sucks. One, community consensus. 2, the 2AC just block. Third is functional conduct cross counterplans and add blank sports perms. 4, if the situation is best answer, the 2AC will always read it. Now, damn bad. Revisionism always hostile declining powers threat international peace status denial removes the incentive for revisionists to rise peaceably, which triggers destabilizing territorial aggression and arms race and air nag analysis of revisionist powers gets it wrong by presuming they're dangerous with the powers growing. The terminal impact defense of all their scenarios that brands when I see evidence is not isolated. Clear impact of democracy is the hope for dealing with ethics and risk is through engaged citizens as on impact, which means a clear non-nebulous scenario for extinction outweighs great for our competition is backward. China will lash out in response to an alliance to democracy is not one of strong brands. 924 trap strong competence we can try to concentrate improvement the past minute showed and become stronger hiding capability to contribute to provokes a coalition rivals future look preventing revisions may grab power go before it's too late peaking powers forces dashes forces pinches the solution matters from the cross futures forces of common revision powers concluded the path of glory was about to be blocked the real trap you should worry about regarding China's which inspired power refusing them to use their consequences democracy causes Nigerian state collapse and civil war they certainly as they said it enables democracy in other places issue 19. Nigeria is about to conduct elections to 5% of budget infrastructure and adequate requiring investments cost of democracy increasing the rentable of resources goods social costs of degraded and depleting stability in elections brought within violence rate the national fabric widen fish with citizens lose face movers to help the United States collapse energies not far off of Russian society's been stability Nigerian stability escalates to global great power array 21 Africa battles happens devastating impact global peaks support the Congo reinforced the origin of pandemic extremism and terrorism is potential spread Nigeria will have 1 billion terrorist groups such as Boko Haram Nigeria great power competition China will be a factor Russia's increase the presence of Africa matters to the rest of the world yes like restoring US norms for democracy sees the net dashboard stability, investing the liberal order of new U.S. led life disturbs rising powers, carefully calibrated strategy, and throws a new threat of U.S. blocking status production into the calculus to respond to U.S. alliance and hedge aggressively to obtain status. Power is a zero-sum game, increasing U.S. democratic credibility necessarily comes at the expense of challenges. Calling 19, the rising power will demand an alteration of the hierarchy of prestige, refers to the perception of states' capabilities and ability to well-used access to power states, can prestige of obtain preferred outcomes where the existing hegemonic lines of rising power sets in. The established power is unable to impose will and other rising power will to a higher rung. The established power will resist. Allies are likely to resist. Rising power will want to solve the procedures to tracks on the ground group. 2 AC 1 and 2, no offense. Rising power will supply all the public goods of noble order, but the decline of U.S. influence key to remedy resistance. Don't debate. 18, internationalism runs out prescribing hierarchical order. The claim the liberal order, the decline overlooks how the institutionalized ideas hang together despite the reach of rate. From not to the rise of the rest provide the public goods at a liberal order requires even the language short of submission. Zeal, China, India, Russia, trying to liberal values, but agree that liberal order is the worst form, except for the others. DPT is not driven by Ukraine. One isolated example doesn't explain. 8,000 empirics is also not about China, who's the only rising power that matters. If you have 8,000 studies suggest democracies are not more peaceful, best explained in terms of democracy, borders to other states, economic development, and foreign alliances. Their studies do not control for any of those. Their studies don't control for conflict severity either. That's a Dorn split evidence. They say yes, or they say no internal link. Yes, we'll continue. The U.S. won't be able to export democratic norms. Absent the plan means authoritarianism will spill in. It's not just populist, but China is trying now. America is not the chief threat of democracy. Winter 21, the U.S. have faced an uphill peak, present itself to guard for democracy. New poll shows the U.S. is seen around the world some more than Russia and China. In all quality, its biggest threat, pay tech challenge Poland among 50,000 countries. America is no longer a Chinese city upon a hill class. 21, America is no longer a Chinese city upon a hill. Allies see democracy is shattered. Watch out for it. Essentially, America's desirable model world wasn't impressed by conspiracy theories, COVID, and insurrection. You will say able to fight authoritarianism, also more hologram appears. Put the fact that Trump claimed the election Republicans break election president, jail opponents for proxy will enhance 6 years impunity. They say unipolarity good, impact does not matter for you, and China rises peaceful, but declining U.S. leadership creates political space for alternative government models to emerge. It's the only way to stabilize the global order and lock in global cooperation to challenge Fomari. 17, there's no one-sided fiscal political system. Liberal internationalism back for working global insecurity interests of him to resume liberal orders unraveling the global order, crusade to spread Western political values, risk backlash. The U.S. does not need to shape the world that would create the conditions for the world to work together without fear, pressure, change their values, enhances U.S. security makes other countries less hostile and creates MP. They say the states kind of plan can see the perm. It's kind of Evangeline. The EPA does not regulate ECs, exemptions, or no exemptions, which means that even if they apply the bad standard, companies will not be required to clean them up. PFAS 20, the lack of regulation for the EPA not yet designated limits of PFAS, or the EPA not designated PFAS has jurisdiction. There's no pollution impact. Extinction's Hollywood alarmism, but data shows clean up, mitigates the talent, the rest that's private was dropped. Their evidence does not isolate a clear scenario for extinction, so air neg to real impacts and tech solve nutrition. 20, chemical capacity overshadowed by toxic progress, NATO and biotech will bring effective filters present on toxic manufacturing. Tech will test the ability of new chemicals to contamination will abate. The terminal impacts clearly about animal design. That's not impact. Biology loss is not essential. That's false. And it's years for each use and diverse, but intervening actions mitigate the challenge. There's no risk of endocrine disruption. We have a study from Harvard, especially better than their journalism. It says it cites empirics and data that says it won't ever cause extinction. Now advantage 2. There's no spillover. The best line of their only card says conceptual borrowing answers the question. Zero cards about water, which means you should have a very high bar for granting the risk of spillover. The best available technology standards exist exclusively under the CWA. After card 0, the plan would even result in precedent that spills over. America's tech dominance is doomed. They can't solve multiple competing factors. That mean China will never win. That's Allison Middle 21. That like investment in U.S. dominance education as competitive China graduates 4 times as many substitutes, 3 times as many computer science of every 10 side. PhDs in the U.S. who are Chinese students who are brought to turn home. The RDs apprentice to travel over U.S. and next China. Share development products spent have been billion to develop the U.S. and all over the SH hegemonic companies where it work with the defense department push against government funding issues or it's ordering the American prowess. No effective loss of tech leadership 2021 supposed threats against Beijing to overturn the LIO, Beijing little interest supporting government. They want actually I'll scratch that card. The disease impact doesn't matter because the counterplan solves all. Okay. Framework vote negative reading the one I see causes more harm than good. Preferred extinction outweighs their claim. Torres says that obsessing over existential risk makes it more likely to political actions. Green light catastrophic consequences like genocide, climate change, and even wars. Their intentions don't matter. The normalization of pernicious ideologies will make us more likely to take these dangerous ideas seriously. Spreading a secular religion, if their ideology normalizes genocide, it's more likely to lead us to ruin and perhaps extinction. Internal links like clash and fairness don't make us more likely to prevent genocide. Only rejecting research practices can. The plan doesn't actually happen, but the one you see was certainly read aloud. Psychological studies agree. I'll skip that. They say clash. We have a larger internal link to the benefits of clash. What we learn and take away from it. We saw clash. The F gets defensive utilitarianism, arrest and securitization of impact good people. Should not treat defend your impact standards an outlandish requirement. Putting together what I say. They say fairness. The chaos outweighs by teaching students to be ethical. Fairness is an internal link. The only impact to any debate is what we learn from it. There's no impact fairness. The results of competition geared to train students in a dangerous worldview. Neglects outweighs fairness. Topics students that is terrible. The resolution doesn't lend to insightful competition debates and very little like uniqueness. Okay, that at least includes an interesting discussion. They say the perm it's irrelevant. The one I see does not introduce a framework argument on an advocacy. They say case is a decided
it's a matter because framework will come first. They say contradictions. They wanted it at first. Sometimes you have to use weapons or the tyrants from dethrone. If we didn't include extinction impacts, then we would have auto lost the debate. Second is negation theory. The next rule is to prove the app. The app is bad or behavior is relevant. They have dropped that debate drops subject affirmation. One is research practice. Debate changes how we think precisely because competition determines everything. People want to win, so winning arguments will change research practice. That's why policy teams read a K version of the one I see in classrooms, judge decisions, say future debates, enabling better advanced choices that are more epistemologically sound. About competing models of debate. Ours is more likely to single out poor research practices. Epistemic fiat, we don't link, it's framework K.
Okay, you good? Cool. Let's start on the democracy turn. So let's clarify really quickly. The link is that the status quo is fine, but if we were to increase the democratic
Yes.
promotion, that
So,
would,
so,
like,
so
trigger
when I see
Chinese,
cross-X
backlash.
was like democratic blacksliding is happening now.
Oh, wait, hold on, my
Authoritarianism
volume.
really.
Wait,
Sorry.
could you restart? My volume was off.
Yeah. When I see cross-X, I asked what is going on with democracy? Like, how's there any uniqueness for it? Ben was like, democratic backsliding is happening now. Authoritarian states are filling in to power vacuums across the globe. Those authoritarian states that are filling in are China. We've read evidence that China is exporting its authoritarian norms, the BRI, other countries, diplomatic negotiations, all of which means that any fill-in that occurs can't just be by like random populists who named not. It's China that's filling in. The plan blocks those by increasing democratic norms, which would impede the transition.
So why is the U.S. like promoting free speech makes China backlash go to war? Like,
well, I think you're I think you're undercutting the argument. We've conceded the internal link to democracy. We've conceded that free speech is everything for a restoration of democratic norms in the status quo. Like,
okay, sure, that's fine. The
Can we pause for a second? My computer's like frozen.
okay, I was at 145.
yeah, that's exactly what I had.
Oh no, what does that mean?
Ben tried to open the K blocks. Did not go well.
I tried to click on something and it just
Is it working now?
that
Yeah. Okay, we're good. 144.
was a big mistake.
Okay. Could you really like the internal link to Nigerian like modeling? I guess like where is the internal link to the Sochonu card, or like what is the best line you think makes the internal link claim?
The internal link being like Nigerian democracy solves conflict, or democracy causes instability in Nigeria.
Yeah, democracy like what is the best line?
Yeah, the Ochunu card says that Nigeria, by investing in democracy, has had to spend billions and billions of dollars. It causes instability between multiple competing powers as new democratic parties are trying to rise up in the state.
The reason
Elections are really expensive. It forces them to deliver social goods, which would cause more instability.
That makes sense. Which piece of evidence says that the reason they do democracy is because the U.S. promotes free speech?
We have conceded the internal link, which says that democracy promotion by the United States would spill over to global regions. Our card indicates that Nigeria probably won't continue its promotion of democracy just because it's too expensive and onerous for them. But if we concede to the internal link, it means that global spillover automatically works. The US automatically exports its democratic norms, which spills over to countries like Africa too.
Okay, let's go to advantage 2 really quickly. I guess like the implication of winning no spillover is that we do not are not able to access like innovation in other areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
None of the other areas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. The arguments about tech solves on chemical pollution, why is this not our argument?
The argument is that status quo technology will be able to solve, like the 1AC's made a uniqueness claim that says innovation is not coming now. We have disputed that uniqueness claim by saying that technology will come.
Okay, the card doesn't say that, but
Sending. Sent. Flog equities.
wait, sorry, could you repeat the order again?
Flog equities.
What was the first one?
Or clog decide.
Sorry, I thought you said fog. don't remember that.
Just give me a minute to-
Is it sent out?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Hang on, I'm
Just
gonna
got it.
make sure I don't these things.
You should turn on your volume. Turn off mine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna take a second to prep.
Hold up, let me mute. Okay.
Four 403. Wait, that's not right. It's 408. Great, a 5-second difference.
Wait, that changes the order.
7 seconds. I thought you were good at math. Come on, man.
What flow is on, Jen?
Advantage 2.
Advanced two. Advanced two, clog, equities. Can you mute, Jim? Anyone not ready?
Yeah. So you said advantage 2 to court clog equities.
Yes.
Awesome.
We all good? Sweet.
Strike no spillover. Now the dissad will concede to COVID dumps and the floodgates are fake and there's no impact. Now the equities counterpoint. The counterpoint narrowly enjoins the behavior rather than issuing a broad nationwide injunction that binds non-parties of the suit. This revives the norm of a narrow injunctions in the federal courts and solves the case by follow-on of cases. Will also enjoin the behavior of parties. One, threshold for a deficit is not ruling certainty, etc. Key, but a universal application is the first lawsuit is key. Two, employee sufficiency cross-by from the other counterpoint. The net benefit is massive. They've dropped it. The universal injunction to disrupt policies only takes one district court judge with an agenda to sway government policy anyway, anywhere, forever and for everyone. That inhibits the government's ability to respond to pandemics, climate change, terror attacks, natural disasters, nuclear war, etc. There's no impact even in the 2AC, which means extinction is certain. It definitely always the case. Independently, the 2AC drop turns case. The Bagley evidence that nationwide injunctions, water policy planning, even if they fiat the plan goes into motion, that doesn't mean that courts will implement in an ideal way. Permutation do both links. The net benefit requires the narrowest possible equity. If they're right about the perm do the counterpoint, then the plan issues an incredibly broad injunctions around the country. Permutation to counterpoint severs topical burdens of issuing general rules that bind everyone across the country. Protection requires generalized legal regimens value in 18 term protection or preservation or use arbitrarily as a equivalent to concepts which is unacceptable in lawmaking. Analysis of modern legal literature shows the categories are opposite. Concepts of protection and preservation are different than protection is the establishment of a general legal regimen. The preservation is a measure taken to prophylactic system means that aims at preventing offenses that eliminate consequences. Prefer it one ground vanilla violation that spills app into neg into a coherent themes, forcing NAF to prescribe universal remedies, allowing them to prescribe targeted remedies, which means yes, no regulation any day of the week. If it's not a counterpoint, it's an app or hose. If the app can specify an exact parties to protect water resource from, meanwhile, the app ground remains high. Most ways can defend why a generalized legal regimen is key to their advantages, but they didn't. Two turns predictability. Our evidence is the only card in the country that describes what protection would mandate rather than affect shielding from harm. Doesn't specify resolution mechanism, which the card they'll read in the block, which makes it hard to report the debate. They can pick any policy that shields from harm. Our cards differentiate that mechanism of protection and preservation with an intent to define perm. Other instances function intrinsic, reject any intrinsic, arbitrary snowballs and Rex ground, reject textual competition, which leads to net ground. One, process counterpoints are key. It's the neg is hosed right now, crossed by that from above. Only process counterpoints are the benefits and keep us in the game. No theory arguments means that they can't make it in the block. Then the 1ER2 is create a perm screenlining perms that create new functions as long as they order the word is preserved. This implicates more than process counterpoints. For example, 2ASA can shape out parts of the advantage counterpoints of fiat out of the impacts of this as it also fails because it must be a narrow injunction, which means that doing it on all water resources broadly would be a nationwide injunction, which doesn't solve the internal net benefits. Saying our process is bad without a warrant is an argument. We can do answers. The 1AR blows this up. Certainty is not responsive. The counterplan rules on the same grounds, but specifies that protecting more plaintiffs requires more lawsuits. However, plaintiffs are likely to file more lawsuits when the Supreme Court just said their legal argument was correct. The 2AC card is about the status quo, not the counterplan that was cross-examined. The counterplan solves through precedent like every major Supreme Court case in history. Ray and 20 start pausing how the system is used and work before national injunctions there would still be such a thing around versus board the way that, but the way the one courts ripple through the through precedent. Here's an example. Court still can literally agree with every part except the remedy. Strassen 19. I agree with the court say it will succeed, but I do not agree with the court that could enforce the law against anyone anywhere at any time based on two plaintiffs' injunctions. A universal prohibits anyone for anywhere that whether they are parties, court sides, or injunctions to harm. So the party face the injunction should protect the plaintiff by not be given a broad scope. The case is made. The nationwide injunctions are not the status quo. The Supreme Court has never ruled on legality of nationwide injunctions, but circuit courts are erroneously apply them now. That's our Bagley evidence. evidence. Yes, spillover evidence says that this says it spills over to aggressive credit precedent that was above. Now, the argument that the plan doesn't turn any case is wrong. One, Bell or arguments on permutation of the counterplan prove the plan must be a nationwide injunction. Two, the court must rule on a test case. That's how the court works. Their card literally does not say they don't need a test case. The court will always find one. Ably and 90 with the 5 that's the cases, namely the courts will always find a case that raised an issue. The court has greatly gone to lengths find an issue that once where the courts cannot the words to argue against issue. Justice wants to consider 3, ruling on sua sponte undermines judicial process. 4 and 15 remains an ample examples of the court's adherence to sua sponte when a court raised an issue on its own initiative away the system. The court eventually this rules and neutral values as our compromise. The court of compromise that rose the rule of law of Johnson. And 17, this is not a this is a lot of wrong with sua sponte consistency with the adversarial system under respect to the legal system is increased likelihood of errors. Sua sponte decisions are inconsistent with the due process when issues are sua sponte properties taken into by a compromise opportunity to be heard essential to requisite to due process. Cut the card at due process extinction. More in 18 countries have turned to education to protect independence. States view abdication as a way to end disputes. Courts achieve the conflict resolution when a state wants to resolve interstate disputes. Countries turn to legal avenue to prevent the threats to the force of rule of law comes to shape the states facing norms that legitimate authority that generates a compliance poll. Cut the card of compliance poll. Now, the last argument about the court bad is not responsible to our impact scenario, which is about administrative law. Good. I'll finish the impact card settlement. Can coordinate policies of government so and create a penalty that took the military action. Legal process shapes of diplomatic context that matters. We need an escalation.
Neither escalation.
Sorry, before 1 hour prep, I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
All right, Chan's back.
Uh, 540. Oh wait, is it? No. 15. Never mind. 132. Is that an important flow? Nah, okay, fine. Okay, I'm going to send out the document. Okay. First advantage, second advantage, advantage counter plan, extinction K, equities counter plan.
One more time.
First advantage, second advantage, advantage counter plan, extinction K, equities counter plan. Okay. Is everybody good to go? Cool. Okay. The EPA not regulating cars is about product liability, not water rights. Yes, impact of pollution, biodiversity, or evidence that it's uniquely interconnected causes things like civilizational collapse. Even if the fact that species dying by themselves is enough cause extinction conceded, the civilizational collapse impact the textiles argument is our argument. You have to prerequisite, otherwise there is no incentive to use the best technology. Yes, impact of biodiversity, I did this above. Yes, impact of endocrine disruptors. The fact that your studies from Harvard does not make it infallible. Our evidence system analysis of the past 3,000 studies in endocrine disruptors concludes that the overwhelming majority say we're headed for extinction. The second advantage. Yes, tech dominance. Your evidence is about the status quo says there's no investment. Our argument is that is because of the anti-competitive effects of patents. We cannot clearly solve that. You cannot go for uniques without answering. Our link now the democracy turn is wrong. The democracy turn is wrong. Yes, we do have an impact of car. This is solves extinction from environmental collapse. And TBT, the Nigeria impact is wrong. One alternative democracy doesn't solve structural economic issues. Democracy just key infrastructure. Second, instability doesn't escalate to great power. Worth all 15. There's a little credible potential for Africa to use mechanism sources for likelihood of victories in the great power. What about even activity supply potential for China to use and variable resources, extraordinarily small autocracies or letting for responsibility, Dowie and Cook and Levitt, autocratic Jews, Jamaican governments to have positional leadership, crisis, responsibility, pressure for instability, potential for president, multiply the public claims of visibility, power that increase chance for political prediction, big themselves, the proxies, literature, music section, the rating forever, the exception of instability. There is no link. They've not read a card about free speech. They've not read a card about free speech. All of their cards say that the U.S. aggressively promoting democracy abroad via things like foreign policies, interventions in the countries to restore democracies and do regime change is bad. None of that is the F. Our argument is that our argument is that absent free speech, private companies will crack down on free speech, which makes autocratic leaders power more likely. There's no reason China would perceive that and think that the United States aggressively promoting democracy in their region because it's about private actors being anti-competitive and restraining free speech. There's no reason China perceives that, but if they do, it's clearly inevitable. The Twin teacher sort of says the U.S. hegemony is in decline. We're going to concede that, takes out the link. They've conceded that during this Trump administration, China perceives status decline. If that did not cause a war, then their thing will not. Then their thing will either. Actually, you know, time for the China revisions card. That is. You think that's fine? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Advantage kind of fun. Doesn't solve anything. First, doesn't solve the environment. You cannot just regulate everything. First, it doesn't solve the generic biodiversity impact. Even if you regulate endocrine disruptors, there are other pollutants you do not solve. Second is you cannot regulate it. The EPA does not just go into rivers and clean it up. It relies on companies using the best available technology. Our evidence reverse causal says that effective technology is needed in order to successfully get things out of the river. You cannot force them to do that. Absent the planet also does not solve the disease. Brandon did not drop it. He read a card on it. Just throwing money at innovations and disease innovation does not solve. Our argument is that absent is that the anti-competitive effects of patents means that those investments will not go into beneficial sources. Throwing money at it fails because there's no direction. The critique. Please go for this. If we win frame, it means we win with implementation of the plan against a competitive alternative clash of all disincentivize targeted research replaces with an academic vacuum. Unpredictable process questions check from argument research which come prior to every other benefit debate. Second, the negative rejoined to the rule of the values arbitrary and self-serving. The counterprediction is bad. That was above group all of the educational office. One, they link to it as well because they read extinction impact. Second, is we solve, you get your links. We just need to weigh the plan. Third, there's no self-information. We have 17 years external self-information, and we switch slides from round to round. They say the play doesn't happen. The alternative doesn't either, so this doesn't matter. They do not have a larger internal link to clash. Even if there are good discussions, they're unpredictable. Yes, effective fairness. That was above. They dropped in impact. They've conceded that extinction discourse is a good thing. We should believe that extinction is the utmost moral evil because it denies possibility of future vital life. They just sort of asserted a root cause claim. No, this court is highlighted terribly and just sort of says that extinction discourse privileges certain voices. That is tautological. There's no card. This is the root cause of extinction. You can't access the case. The equity counterplan. First is permutation due to the counterplan cross apply or counterpredation of the word protect from the 2AC. It does not link to predictability because it does define it as a mandate to regulate. Their interpretation is terrible because it means you can get picks out of anything. If the app has to be generalized and applied to a whole area of law, then you can pick out of any sort of river or any sort of concept which makes infinite picks inevitable and makes it impossible to be making it on the affirmative is better because you look at generic like states, but we do not get that. We don't get it, which means that your networks for the balance of ground. We saw predictability that was above. Now the intrinsic permutation to the app and the counterplan process for water research generally. It's not intrinsic at all because it commands the plan of the campus process, but it's not fiat what the process is done over. Intrinsic is defined limit of interpretations personally gets apply the campus action to object. Key to germane is reinforce the the campus germane opportunity cause. It prevents devolution to stupid process campus of the weakest chips of its educational value. Now the campus is massively uncertain. The campus is massively uncertain to internal links versus there is no test case to overturn. There's no test case to overturn. I'll do that in a second. Second is actually what was I going to say? There is no test case to overturn. The courts don't have to rule in the test case. Their theory arguments are wrong because only we have evidence about the patent process, which means that the counterplan looks absurd. Which means the counterplan looks absurd. Third, second, we'll concede the Strauss evidence specifically says that the counterplan excludes providing a remedy. This means that there is no way for the courts to prescribe under what circumstances patents can be infringed upon, which means that there is no remedy. Which means it doesn't solve either the first or second advantage. Second, that they concede it doesn't lead to process spillover. It doesn't lead to process spillover because it doesn't solve the second advantage. That benefit is terrible. That benefit is terrible. If they're correct that any court decision that prescribes remedy links, then that is clearly the status quo. Even if not in the case of water, other areas like criminal law, antitrust, etc., all have cases where the courts prescribe remedies. They have set the bar at that. Clearly, this is inevitable. I just realized MBA. Oh wait, are they gone?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did they?
Did they like
Cut
hear
out.
me when they are?
I'm not sure.
Luckily, there is a live stream, so they can just like go back and watch it. This is unfortunate. Uh-oh.
I'm assuming the tech person that just left is resolving this.
Yeah. Oh shoot, Chandon like texted me in the middle of the 1AR and was like, oh no.
They're like Wi-Fi's cut out or like
Yeah.
oh. I was told that the MBA building has no power.
Oh.
Tim, do you know if somebody in tab room knows about this already? I assume the tech person knows. But
Yeah, I don't know. I can email really quick.
When they do get back, how do we want to handle that? Because I'm assuming they missed the vast majority of the 1AR.
there's a recorded live stream, so maybe we can get the tech people to repeat back.
Okay.
They missed the whole speech, I've been told. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess.
It's not great.
Did you all see the email in the chain?
What did it say?
They're just going over to one of the kids' houses because the school doesn't have power.
Yeah.
It's a really unfortunate time to lose power.
Pretty sure MBA also like blocks cellular, so.
Tim, did you say you emailed the tab room already? I'm here. I'm just going to turn off my camera until they show up.
Okay, sorry. Wow. We're here. Sorry for the interruption. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect.
How are we gonna?
Yeah, Chandon, can you hear us?
Yeah, we have
Okay.
Marshall Green to thank for this one.
So, well, except for we have a slightly different problem. I emailed the tab room, but like the 1AR happened.
I also have legal paper.
Oh, the 1AR happened?
It did, without any of us noticing that you were not here.
Okay, how do we?
So I don't know the answer to that. I emailed the tab room and said, should we get a recording of the 1AR? Like, how do you all want us to proceed? But like the speech happened, theoretically, it's recorded and has been live streamed. I just don't know how the tournament people want us to resolve this problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess since you don't know what the speech
Yeah, I have
said,
no idea what just happened. So
right? And since they can't really prep for your 2 and R, we'll just wait and we'll let the tournament tell us what to do.
that's perfect.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Only at the TOC.
Yeah. Yeah. That really sucks. Do you know what like happened? Like what caused the outage?
It was like a pretty mass power outage, to be honest. I have no idea what it was. Like data wasn't working like a mile around FBA either. So that 3-word email I tried sending took like 4 minutes. I was like holding my phone up to the sky.
It really sucks.
Okay. I got a response from the tab room that says if you go to the link for the live stream, they should be able to watch the speech there. So
Okay.
I think their plan is to have, I will put the link to the live stream in here.
I have it.
Okay. So I think that what we want to do, I guess, is have you all watch the speech, flow it, and then we'll start prep afterward.
That's perfect. Pack's still like having setup issues.
Yeah.
Could we get like a minute or two?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll email them about like decision time for the judges and see if we can
Okay.
get it extended, because that's the only other thing I'm really worried about.
Thank you.
I'm gonna turn my camera off because I'm gonna eat lunch or something, but I'm not prepping. Don't worry.
Okay, I think we're about to start watching. Pack, if you want to put it up there. Put the live stream link up there. Okay, give us a second to find the 1AR. Okay, we're about to start.
Okay, we got it. Where's my timer? I'll use my phone. I have a timer. Okay, we're gonna start watching now. Ben's giving the order, so like 5:30ish. Okay, sorry now.
Okay. Just finished. 408 or something like that. Starting.
Yeah, it's 408.
Is everyone here? Okay. Everyone here? Sweet. It's the K, the advantage counter plan, the equities counter plan. That's it. One second.
Sorry, repeat one more time.
the K, the advantage counterplan, the equities counterplan. One sec, sorry, I'm starting at my stand. Okay. Are you not ready? Cool. Wait.
Oh, no.
Never mind. You can remute. I thought Pax still had his external mic set up. Okay, good, cool. Okay, kick it, condo, advantage, counterplan, the same, equities.
There's zero winnable 2AR because of 1AR dropped the disadvantage to sua sponte, which they've said is normally into the affirmative. This means they cannot go for a solvency deficit because they've conceded a disadvantage to the app that must outweigh because it was conceded the 1AR evidence as a sua sponte and undermines the rule of law, making multiple scenarios for nuclear war inevitable, causing extinction. That also makes any perm unwinnable because including the app will always cause extinction. That means the only solution for solving all the 1AC's net benefits is by doing the counterplan. They have only a certainty deficit here, which means it solves at least as best as a 1AC. The internal net benefit outweighs effective administration of state actions key to resolve multiple conceded accidental impacts like pandemics, climate change, terror attacks, natural disasters, and nuclear war, which turns all of the 1AC extinction is certain because all of those net benefits drop. Universal injunction hampers an effective administrative state. You cannot go for a solvency deficit. What if you consider the national injunctions turn case by undermining enforcement, bag leases, nationwide injunctions, direct water policy planning. Even if they feel the plan goes into motion, that does not mean courts will implement it in a deal way. Their only answer to the benefit here is that it's non-unique. That is our argument. Uniqueness is our argument. We have said that circuit courts are employing universal injunctions now, but the Supreme Court has never ruled on them. The counterplan would create the precedent that universal injunctions are never allowed, which would only allow narrow particular injunction, which solves the net benefit. Judge kick the counterplan if we lose the perms or links to net benefit that was in the 2 and C. It was dropped by the 1AR. Now perm do the counterplan. It's a murder protection means establishing generalized legal regimes, which means a universal injunction. The counterplan of preservation, which enjoins for presence of a wrongful act, prefer it. Neg ground outweighs everything. The topic's already massive with no disheads and constant regulatory activities coming from the Biden administration. It's try or die for a semblance of a rule from the negative. Ben has conceded from conditionality that the neg is screwed on the topic unless that's process counterplan, especially because there's new apps, so we should be able to do whatever we want. Protectionism and lowering injunctions wrongful wrongful act means topical apps can enjoin particular companies, individuals, or even polluting state governments, which is impossible to write case against. Functional limits cannot check. There are easy one and done apps that subvert the generics. Targeted remedy apps would collapse an already ailing topic. Negground must outweigh AFGround here because of apps, because we've already won. There are no disadvantages to the topic, which means that even all their offenses about picks will always be outweighed. Now, pick specifically one lit checks. There's not specific rivers or specific ponds that would be outweighed by the rest of the affirmative, and any uncertainty deficit would cause a signaling deficit that would outweigh the net benefit of not including that river. Second, it would link to all your deficits, the signaling, modeling, etc. All of your deficits about uniformity that you'd read against the state's counterplan could all apply. Third, you could just beat picks on theory and say picks bad if they're overpowered and unbeatable. Now, AFGround is non-starter. The AF can pick any resource but protects it from any individual in the country. They need only have deficits of broad enforcement like credibility, signaling, and disadds to exceptions, which are above. They have predictability. It's a tiny internal length value. UNA has an intent to define, differentiate, and exclude. Even if some cards are more qualified, it's most useful for debate purposes because it explains what an app must mandate. The cards don't disprove or interpretation of protection, saying the app must also inhibit use to regulate is irrelevant. That's like responding to should, must be immediate with should. Does not have to be certain. An interesting point, but totally irrelevant. The one I read, no cards protection for target specific wrongful acts. Now, the second permutation, they can't go for it if we win from the counterplan because they haven't provided a text for you to read. Means that it's at least textual intrinsic because through the process is not included in the plan or the counterplan. Ben has said that intrinsic permutations, which are textually non-intrinsic, are still okay. But now, if we went from the counterplan, it doesn't matter. Now the perm adds functions not present in the plan or the counterplan. It adds accommodation, which is legitimate. Negflex outweighs their offense. Sexual competition makes debate impossible for the negative. One is a process arsenal. It was dropped. It's only limited affirmatives. Even if states advantage and incentives are strong, there's no dis to pair with the literature. Unanimously agrees protection is good. It destroyed economy, boxes up ISCON and politics, floor clog, and federalism are jokes. You can't pair process counterplans with external offense because apps have deficits large enough to outweigh charitable dis. Second is advantage counterplans and creative permutations, which drop. Sexual competition results in absurd outcomes. Fun let wins. Regulate nuclear power and ban autonomous counterplans and bind autonomous weapons. All present in an advantage counterplan could be permutation to together to fund nuclear weapons to solve the impact of dissets. Process counterplans wouldn't delete every app, but they do pare down the topic to size the negative channel. This is the only other offense in the 1AR because it's about AFGround deficits bad. Their uncooperative federalism, reg-neg commissions would never work against the courts apps. You can say apoliticization is key, read agent key warrants, speed, and certainty key warrants. Apps under our model would probably look like courts mechanisms, strong precedent advantage, which access the key deficits against process counterplans that exist. Now the sua sponte stuff, the Twitter will try to bank their strategy here. Does not, so the Caden card does not say the court can rule sua sponte. The best line they have is that the federal court system is authorized to intervene on its own. This is a card against a counterplan that competes on rulemaking or dissent that links to judicial independence, but it does not generate competition for this kind of plan. Context for the court is that if Congress has not previously legislated on patent issues, the court has the ability to rule in cases regarding those patent issues. It's definitely the way the author intends. Kane says, quote, federal courts have already ruled in patent cases with the outcomes that favor use by second customers, as seen in the eBay and Paste cases. This does not mean the court does not need a test case. In fact, it means they must have test cases as cited in EBA and Paste. But even if you conclude the right about sua sponte, the doctrine has central dissent, which must automatically outweigh. Now the certainty deficit, they can't go for the deficit because the internal net benefit was dropped and they've conceded sua sponte will always outweigh. They've conceded all the one in our court that say the counterplan is just as certain the affirmative. It creates a precedential spillover that they have no cards to respond to. Bray used the example of Brown v. Ward, which is a narrow injunction about one plaintiff, but it's built up to create a nationwide precedent. This is obviously analogous to all the narrow injunctions that the Supreme Court has imposed in the past. Every single Supreme Court decision in the past has been narrow, which means that any precedent that has been created is solved. Conceding the Strauss Court is more harmful than the Appleton is helpful. It says that universal injunctions are less enforceable than narrow injunctions.
$135.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Is everyone good for an order? It'll just be advantage 1, advantage 2, and then the counterplan. Okay. Anyone not good? Cool. Dropping the case means that sufficiency framing flips affirmative. If you think we can win some risk of a solvency deficit and a little bit of defense, if you think we can win some risk of the solvency deficit and some defense to the internal net benefit, means you should automatically flip affirmative because you know that our impacts will happen fast and that they were at 100%. The scenarios on the equities counter plan, so the scenarios on advantage 1, not going to go for them because the turnabout admin state stuff that was at the top of the equities counter plan. But advantage 2, I'm going to go for here. Fair use exemption to the CWA spill up to broadly creating exemptions for a litany of industry. That's key to winning the tech race, key to better disease response and democracy. All of those result in extinction. I don't have to do a ton of explanation here because they didn't go to it. But the admin state turnabout, how ineffective admin state means we can't solve our impacts, doesn't apply here because the admin state stuff is only key to EPA regulation, which is advantage 1. Advantage 2 is about core exemptions broadly and how industries would be able to innovate if these court exemptions were done in the court. Obviously, do not need the admin state to implement any of that stuff. All that caused extinction and was dropped. The counterplan. going to do the certainty solvency deficit here at the top because that was kind of mishandled by Chen and the 2NR. Certainty is key. The counterplan wrecks it by not prescribing remedies. That was the 1NR concession of the Strauss piece of evidence, which the tag of explicitly says that the remedy is the one thing the counterplan can't do. It's the one thing that the counterplan picks out of in the context of the affirmative. That remedy is patent exemptions and a BAT standard that companies have to follow on to. Yes, that Strauss piece of evidence goes our way, even if broadly it's prescriptive universal input being broadly not as effective. It doesn't matter because our argument about certainty is about the remedies thing, which is like the one thing that Strauss says that like the Strauss says the counterplan can't do. Absent it, past examples like Brown v. Board and past decisions don't matter. They're not comparable to the affirmative, which I'll explain here. Absent remedies, uncertainty wrecks investment in research. Risk that major corporations with patent monopolies who could still litigate is enough to shut down alternative paradigms of innovations, even if they're winning that somehow legally on face, there is an exemption. Small producers are scared of getting litigated, even if they're legally incorrect, because the cost associated with litigating huge monopolies is enough to make small producers go bankrupt, regardless of whether they win or not. That was the Narachania card 50. That was the Narachania 15 card from the UN counterplan that we cross-applied to the equities counterplan. That's key to innovation in all forms of tech. It's strive for new forms of innovation like open source. Collaborative models are the only way to reduce incentives to invent, disclose, and disseminate technology. But they're doomed to fail. Absent certainty that monopolies won't screw them over. The status quo patent system is doomed and cannot produce these new types of tech. Which means that if we can win some sort of certainty deficit, they definitely just cannot solve for any of the tech that is necessary for the eventual offense. The offense that they're going for first is that the sua sponte stuff will concede that our reading of the 2AC card that's like we don't need a test case is wrong. That takes out sua sponte because yes, they would need a test case. The other dissad.
So Blair said that like the way sua sponte works only applies to the patent system.
Yeah, they said it's just in the patent system. Even if they're right about their reading of the card, it wouldn't spill up and they wouldn't be able to access like broader judicial credibility. The other dissat is non-unique, mishandled all the thumpers that Ben brought up in the 1AR, tons of court cases now where remedies are specific, things like antitrust, civil, criminal, even the WOTUS case because they had to prescribe a definition and how the EPA would enforce it. Obviously, this is non-unique. Tons of thumpers apply. This is not their uniqueness argument because they do not prove a break because these just prove that the fact that these did not take out the impact means that obviously the internal link is resilient and would not be triggered by the affirmative. Perm to the counterplan, I'll do it. I'll do it here. Even if you don't agree with all the stuff above, this definitely takes out the entirety of the counterplan. Obviously, it takes out the dissad. If the counterplan is the AF, then like obviously we can do it. We solve it. Perm to the counterplan, framing issue. This competes off T subset. It justifies infinite picks out of individual people, places, or concepts. That makes being AF impossible because they just have to win that the AF is bad for a single person. They can obviate the rest of it. Subsets AFs are better than infinite picks. The next is generics like state politics K, which politics and Ks, which can beat small AFs, but the AFs can't leverage anything generic to be tiny picks. We agree that the neg is screwed, but you don't need subset picks to stay in the game. Proven by the fact that NBA has been winning all year, and this is the first round where they've gone for a counterplan that competes like that. We'll concede that process counterplans are good for from the intrinsic term debate. They solve neg round because they're fair because the AF can leverage generic answers. Picks bad theory is silly because judges roll their eyes at that, and any picks bad argument will be arbitrary if it's not backed by this competition argument. So this argument doesn't make sense. We solve predictability. Only one AR argument was that the mandate versus effect argument 2AC protect definition solves this because it specifically prescribes a permitting mechanism which would like resolve the same internal link. You should defer to the Collin-Gel definition from the T protect solves all of their offense and is net better because it solves picks and like apps should just lose every single debate. Good debate, y'all.
Card docs, please.
Yes, please.
Night card docs.
The F card doc sent.
The decision's in if everybody's here. Is anyone missing? And everybody can hear me? All right, excellent. Congratulations to both teams. The decision is a 2-1 for the, double checking myself, negative from Montgomery Bell. I sat, so I will start. I think that there was a significant risk of the solvency deficit, and I think that the solvency deficit outweighed the risk of the net benefit. I think that the AF is doing a better job of characterizing the certainty arguments. I think their cards are a little bit, yeah, that's fine. Do you want me to give you a second, MBA? Oh, wait.
Yes, we're still listening, but we're just going to drive back to MBA and we're going to be on our hotspot so we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I think that there is a significant risk of the extinction impacts on the AF, the certainty stuff that I don't think that you all solve the remedy argument in particular. I also think I have some arguments also on the permutation, but I think that while I think that the counterplay, I think the AF ultimately then outweighs. I don't think the impacts to sua sponte are necessarily very clear. I also think that there's significant impact defense in the sense that there are other examples. Now, admittedly, I don't think Westminster is explaining that impact defense very well at the very bottom, exactly how it takes it out. But I also don't think that there's a response from MBA about why the rule of law arguments are ultimately low risk because of these other precedents that are being set. I think if there was a little bit more impact comparison, I think that maybe I would have felt more comfortable voting negative. I think that there is a difference between generalized law. So on the perm debate, I don't think that the AF actually does get the permutation because they're not dealing with some of these definition arguments that are there. And so I kind of sit and think, do I think the risk of the solvency deficit? I also did sit for a second and wonder whether I thought the 2AR analysis was a little bit too new. But I do think that the 1AR says the certainty argument and explicitly flags the remedy argument as well, which means that I think it's sufficient enough to be the AF gets to explain their impact scenarios. And I just think that argument seemed to be more true. And I didn't really have a clear analysis as to why the counterplan would necessarily result in the same sort of remedies, especially if they're narrow. But I do sit and think about the fact that AF advantage is we are very narrow. So I'm maybe there's this weird interaction between perm the counterplan because the AF actually articulates that it would only affect very specific types of patents. And so I think that I need the negative to explain a little bit more in depth the internal link scenarios or why kind of the narrow nature of the plan and the way that plays out and why that would cause some massive universal injunction. And I think that's where my misunderstanding. So obviously the two other judges saw it very differently, or maybe not very differently, but saw it differently, that maybe there's something that I'm just not seeing that I felt was not as explicit as it could have been. So congrats to both teams though. This was really tough circumstances and I'm impressed with both teams and how you all handled it.
So I voted negative. I thought the counterpoint competed and solved the app, and there was some risk of the net benefit. I'll start with the competition debate. I was pretty neg here, and I think a lot of that was the virtue of pretty low 2AR time investment. I think that the neg having to answer or having to cut case negs to the tiny river and individual company apps is much more difficult than the picks the app would have to answer under a model in which protection has to be a generalized legal regime. So I think there's a couple of negative responses that aren't answered in the 2AR. The first, I think, is the app will always be able to generate deficits to picks with uniformity and signaling deficits. I don't think this is a great argument, but I don't think it really gets any pushback in the 2AR. And the second is I think that they're doing a way better job characterizing that their neg is just screwed on this topic. There's no DAs. And they go through and answer some of the generics that you say are will make it easy for the negative to push back against some of the smaller apps. I thought the predictability stuff was like kind of a wash. Everyone just kind of says their definition is predictable, but doesn't really impact it out or anything. So I ultimately think that neg ground outweighs off ground. The solvency deficit, I just like think this is like totally made up and disjointed in so many ways. So the AF advantage is about precedent, the fair use doctrine being applied to patent law more broadly. The card that you read about certainty is if small startups and companies that are developing generics for drugs are trying to enter the market, they will not do so if they think there's the threat of a lawsuit from a company that currently has a patent over that drug. Your deficit is after a legal violation is found, the remedy applied in the world of the counterpoint is different from the AF. All of these things are like pretty different. I don't think there's any 1AC card about the remedies applied. And I don't even think like the neg card is like really like the neg card's not like making a differentiation of just like these remedies are good, these remedies are bad. The counterpoint applies these remedies, the AF applies these remedies. The Strauss card is just saying that the remedies applied outside when there's not a universal injunction or just more tailored and narrow to the specific case. I'm unsure why that differential translates into a solvency deficit or something for an AF internal link. So given that I think there's basically close to no risk of a solvency deficit, net benefit stuff was basically an afterthought. Maybe AF has some defense, but I think it's there and certainly much larger than any risk of the solvency deficit. But great debate, everyone.
The end of my decision is relatively similar to Arvin's. I ultimately concluded that the counterplan solved the entirety of the AF, so I didn't really consider much about the net benefit since the counterplan solved the AF. I started the debate in a similar way, figuring out perm through the counterplan. I thought that the neg had pretty substantial sort of like defensive arguments to check. So like, I mean, ultimately, this perm to the counterplan debate was like, would picks be worse for the AF or would AF ground be worse for the neg? I think that the neg has quite a bit of defense to the fact that, like the topic is already sort of biased against the negative and that the AF will always be able to innovate, find new things, answer picks. And if it is true that they're unbeatable, that, people would probably just stop voting for picks to allow the AF to win some debates. And I just don't think you all really have any defense to their offense about if this counterplan is an AF, then literally anything is an AF, and you can generate sort of like whatever subset you want to, which increases AF ground massively. So I ultimately just sort of thought that the perm to the counterplan was pretty heavily, the theory debate was moving in the direction of the negative. So after that, I pretty much had to decide if the counterplan solved the AF. I'll be honest, I thought for like a while that I was going to vote AF, and I'm like really sorry if I did something wrong, but my decision is slightly different than Arvin's because I don't think you ever read the Duan card. Ben marks the 1AC before that card is read. Brandon extends it, but like that card's not read. I don't think you have an internal link to this certainty deficit. It's not even in the AF card doc. Like you reference Duan, but the Duan card is not in the doc because Ben marked the card before that in the 1AC. So after I sort of determined that, I looked at this card that you do extend that it's sort of based on, and I'm like, okay,
we cost patent companies a few $1 billion. Like maybe that's enough of a deficit. But I think that the AF internal links that the counterplan does solve about fair use patenting are sort of like sufficient in order to resolve all of the internal links that you have provided absent that Duan card that was not read. So like, I just thought the counterplan solved the entirety of the 1AC as it was presented. And then, you know, at that point, obviously the internal net benefit outweighs. Had I concluded differently, I would have had to rethink my decision and determine whether the internal net benefit outweighed the solvency deficit, but I just didn't really think that way. So am I wrong that the Duan card was read? Because that would make me.
No, it wasn't read.
Yeah.
We didn't read that, but I believe we read a different certainty key card in the 2AC.
Like, yeah, no. I evaluated that card. I think that that card says that it would cost patent companies, like I said, like billions of dollars. This like the card that starts with the last name in, and like I was trying to understand so like to me, what that piece of evidence says is just like court sort of like litigating challenges cause like, you know, companies to not know what to do, so they won't necessarily invest in startups that much. But what the 1AC Duan card says that I think is sort of like important is that early investment and those sorts of things are what's critical for innovation. Like I think the internal link between certainty and innovation is sort of missing absent this Duan card. And since that's the internal link that all of your advantage impacts are sort of based on, I think that absent that card, all the fair use key to innovation stuff that the counterplan does solve is sufficient to solve the internal links to the AF, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
I also came down neg on like all the theory. I thought the neg was way out debating y'all on theory, but I just thought the solvency deficit, I thought there was a better explanation. So it was just literally that little bit of difference. But I agree with a lot of what the other people said too.
Yeah, we're good if MBA has, or is MBA still here?
We are. Yeah, that was all really helpful. I don't think we have any questions. That was a great debate, y'all. Ben, love you, man.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck, MBA.
Debate. Good luck.